Good morning, it's September 11th. This is To My Liberal Friends. Well, yesterday was a sad day for the country. Charlie Kirk was assassinated while speaking at Utah Valley University. A gunman shot him from the top of a nearby rooftop. Kirk was pronounced dead at the hospital. Charlie Kirk was a conservative. He was an activist and the founder of Turning Point, which focused on getting young conservatives involved politically. His trademark was encouraging debate and was more than willing to debate those with a different point of view. If you watched his podcast or watched him at any of these rallies, that's what he did. He debated people, he listened and debated. Charlie Kirk was only 31 and leaves behind his wife Erica and two young children. It was a senseless act of violence. But what we should do is force all of us to take a look inward and reflect on what's happening in our political world. Are we so consumed with hatred that we cannot tolerate someone having a different opinion than ours? I went to Washington, D.C. in 1977 to work for Senator Orrin Hatch from Utah. Across the hall from our offices was the Democratic staff for a Senate committee. We got to know each other, had lunch with each other, and while we differed politically, we could discuss issues in a civil manner and be friends. Senator Hatch became a close friend to Senator Ted Kennedy. They could not be more opposite, politically and personally, but they developed a friendship that transcended politics. And while serving on the Labor and Human Resources Committee, swapping the role of chairman and ranking member as politics changed the makeup of the Senate, they were able to work together and pass multiple pieces of major legislation. They had to compromise on some issues, but it ended up benefiting millions of Americans. Some of that legislation created the generic drug industry. Some of it created incentives for drug companies to do research for rare diseases, and on and on. But somewhere along the lines, things changed. No longer could we be friends if we differed politically. Conservatives criticized Hatch for being friends with Kennedy, and liberals criticized Kennedy for working with Hatch. Why? I think the change began after the 2000 election when many Democrats decided that George W. Bush had somehow stolen the election from Al Gore. You may remember the staff at the White House and the Executive Office Building, which is adjacent to the White House, in a fit of anger, removed all the W's from the keyboards. Conservatives got angry as well. They started calling Democrats and liberals names. The political discourse of the nation began to spiral downward. When Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, he held a rally on the Mall in Washington, D.C. He urged his supporters to march peacefully to the Capitol and excused himself of any rhetoric that might have inflamed them. He should have known he was inciting a small portion of those in attendance, and they stormed into the Capitol that fateful January 6th. It's only gotten worse since Trump was reelected in 2024. Democrats and liberals went out of their minds. The media was complicit in much of this. They need to own up to their part in what's been occurring. We hear Trump being called all kinds of names. They call him a new Hitler. They call him a fascist. And that's only the beginning. It goes on, and they don't seem to realize they're dragging the nation down as a whole when they do this. Barack Obama once said, elections have consequences, meaning the winners have the right to use their policies in government. But somehow a large majority on the left refused to accept this. When the news broke about the shooting of Charlie Kirk, one commentator on MSNBC could not contain himself. He had to bring his personal animus towards anyone who was conservative on the air. Matthew Dowd said, quote, Kirk has been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. I think that's the environment we're in. That's the people you can't stop these awful thoughts. You have them saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place. That's the unfortunate environment we're in. End quote. Was he listening to himself? Was he not listening to what being said about conservatives by the liberals? It's been reported this morning that MSNBC, after apologizing for Mr. Dowd's remarks, had parted ways with him as a commentator. If true, it's a step in the right direction. We don't need people fomenting others. I would say to everyone, whether you're on the right or the left, when you hear family members, friends, or acquaintances start calling someone whose views they differ names that are out of the political realm, and you simply nod your head or say nothing to caution them, then you're aiding and abetting this downward spiral of discourse that to a small minority of people on any part of the political spectrum sounds like a call to some form of violent action. In most cases, they are mentally unsound, but those words they hear resonate with them, and they try to take that action. The solution is stop. Stop the name calling. Agree to disagree, but leave it at that. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.